so I just wanted to vlog about sort of my different birth experiences. If you follow my channel or my other vlogs, you'll know that I had my second daughter, Sienna, 12, not quite 12 weeks ago, nearly 12 weeks ago. And I had a completely different birth experience with Sienna than I did with my first daughter, Sophia, who is now 3. So I made a vlog all about Sienna's birth, which you can watch. I uploaded it about 8 weeks ago, and it has more detail about her birth. But a couple of people asked me to talk about my first birth, which was quite different and a lot more traumatic. I have actually done a vlog about my first birth, which is over on the channel Mum site, so I will put a link to it below. But I wanted just to make this one really just to say, if you've had a traumatic first birth, or a first birth that didn't quite go to plan, or that, you know, upsets you when you think about it, or it's made you anxious, please do not think that all births are going to be like that, because I had 2 completely different birth experiences, and I feel so different about my second birth, and it's helped me to, I guess, overcome what happened in the first one. So my first birth, I'll just tell you briefly. Basically, I was induced when I was 14 days overdue. I had the pessary. Unfortunately, I hyperstimulated as a result of the pessary, which means that rather than having contraction and then it wears off, I was having contraction after contraction after contraction. So it was just a constant pain. And then we were left until I was 16 days overdue because they were very busy and loads of women were having births, and I was seen as not a major priority. Anyway, finally the baby they checked me, and my temperature had gone up and the baby's heart rate had gone up, and so everything kind of had to be quite rushed. I'd ended up having every type of drug that they could possibly give me. Pethidine, which made me really sick, you know, paracetamol, and then an epidural. And I had a very strong epidural, didn't feel anything from my waist down. And then the birth itself was okay because I couldn't feel anything, although I couldn't then feel pushing, and because of that ended up having to have a ventouse because I couldn't push properly to get the baby out. And after the birth, unfortunately, I then hemorrhaged, which was one of the most scary things I've ever gone through in my entire life. So when I fell pregnant the second time, all those fears from the first birth came back up. They really affected me. I was actually having nightmares. I was getting so anxious. I was crying. I just really did not want to have to be induced again, because I felt that a lot of the problems and the hemorrhaging had stemmed from the induction and the hyperstimulation, which put a lot of pressure on my uterus, which then didn't clamp down properly and then led to me bleeding, and I was really panicked. So what I did was I made the midwife and the doctors and everything very aware of this at the very beginning, that I was anxious, that I was worried. And because of what had happened the first birth, I was put under consultant care, which was absolutely brilliant and meant that I felt that I was sort of being listened to, and that they agreed that the first birth things had gone wrong and they wanted to try and avoid induction as well. And I think this birth, I was much more clear in what I wanted, in what my fears were, and kind of what I didn't want to happen. So I really didn't want to be induced. And because of that, they made a plan for me to start having sweeps at 39 weeks. I ended up still going 2 weeks overdue and having 6 sweeps. Yes, 6. And in fact, I had a 7th one in the hospital. So I had 7 sweeps. Oh my word. But I naturally, in the end, went into labour the morning I was due to be induced. So by the time I got to the hospital, I was already 4 centimetres. I laboured in the birthing pool, which was brilliant. They did have to break my waters because my waters didn't go naturally, but I was fine with that. I then I didn't give birth in the birthing pool because I was begging for an epidural. I was like, please. But by the time they'd prepared me for the epidural, the head was there. Basically, they turned to me and said, yes, no time for an epidural. We see the head. You're going to have to start pushing. And about 30 minutes after that, my second daughter, Sienna, was born. And it was an unbelievable experience. Blooming painful. I mean, childbirth is horrendously painful, like there's no denying that. Well, for me it was anyway, and I was screaming, I can't cope, give me the drugs, give me morphine, anything that they could give me. But it was too late, so I ended up giving birth without even a paracetamol. And afterwards, I felt like a different person. There was no hemorrhaging. In fact, I bled very, very minimally. I think I only lost 100 ml, which is very, very little. So such a difference. And I just felt different afterwards, and it changed my whole outlook on birth, because I realized that actually it can be totally different and it can be chilled and it doesn't have to involve loads of drugs and, you know, doctors and people running around and lots of stress. Obviously certain things can sometimes you cannot account for, and I was lucky with the second birth that there were no complications, and sometimes that isn't the way. But all I want to say is, before I had my second daughter, lots of people said to me second births can be so different, and I am proof of that, and I can vouch for that. They really can be. Not every second birth is going to be totally easy and totally straightforward, but if you are worried, do speak to someone. Do tell your midwife, ask to see a consultant. You know, this time I know that I spoke up a lot more about my concerns, my fears, my anxieties, and they were taken seriously. I wasn't laughed at or thought to be some sort of mad woman or that I couldn't handle it. They take those things seriously because they don't want you to be anxious. It's a scary enough time. So yeah, speak to someone. If you want to go through your first birth, you can do that as well. You're able to meet with a midwife, which I did, and went through step by step my first birth and how we can make those changes the second time. So if you are worried, honestly, the second time can be so different. Please don't panic. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Subscribe if you want any more updates, and please like if you like this video, and I'll be back with more updates very soon.